Isaac, I want to turn things over to the starting rotation in what a segment I'm going to call the Starters Report, TM, very unofficial. But I want to talk about the three guys who pitched in this series and how they line up going into the postseason here. Chris Bassitt, 6 2/3, 2 hits, 2 earned runs, no walks, 8 Ks, 88 pitches, 8 hard hits allowed. He was very good. He had his career high 15th win. He'll have a chance at 200 innings pitch in his next start. Hyun-Jin Ryu, we mentioned in the game recaps, not as good. 4 1/3, 7 hit, 5 earned runs, 3 walks, 2 strikeouts. I think he gave up 4 home runs as well, did Ryu. And Yusei Kikuchi, 4 innings, 9 hits, 3 earned runs, no walks, 7 Ks, and was pulled in the 4th inning after only his 73 innings pitched. But the way the schedule kind of lines things up for these 6 games here is I believe we've got, we have Kevin Gausman going tomorrow, and then Berrios, Bassitt, Ryu, and Kikuchi, which the way it lines up is that Kevin Gausman is currently scheduled to start that last game of the year against Tampa Bay. I'm assuming the Blue Jays already have it clinched by then. What they'll likely do is probably put Bowden Francis, or they just called up a guy, Wes Parsons, I believe it is, from Buffalo to join their taxi squad. Maybe he starts that game. And then you get Gausman starting game 1 against Tampa. But how do you follow the rest of that rotation? Are you putting Berrios 2 and Bassitt 3, or are you putting Kikuchi up there? What are you doing if you're the Blue Jays?
Oh, geez. Yeah, I think I would go depending on if we win the first game. And I think how I would do it is if you win the first game, you put Berrios in. And if you lose the first game, you put Bassitt in. Okay. My thought behind that is just because, like, I think Bassitt I would prefer to have in that super, like, winning, like, you need to absolutely win. Whereas I think if you win the first game and then you can kind of put Berrios in, and then if you lose, then Bassitt's the guy in the game that absolutely matters. That's kind of how I would do it. And I don't know if Kikuchi breaks my top 3, honestly, as shitty as that is to say, because now I know you're probably going to say different, but I don't know. I just don't trust him as much. I feel like he's my Berrios, just like you. So how do you do it?
I think you nailed it with we'll see what happens in game 1 before we start game 2. If you remember last year in the playoffs in the wild card round, they had Alek Manoah start game 1, and the plan was to go with Ross Stripling in game 2 if they won. Instead, the Blue Jays lost, so they went with Gausman in game 2, and it turns out we lost that game anyway, so it didn't matter. I think you're right. I want to see Chris Bassitt go in game 2. You saw what he just did against the Rays. And Chris Bassitt, because he throws so many different pitches, he can really change his look or almost look like a different pitcher every single time he comes out. And the Rays management people are so smart at trying to pick up on things a pitcher does that if you have more tools in the bag, I think you are more likely to be effective. Like, for example, after this series, I do not want to see Hyun-Jin Ryu pitch against the Rays at all in the postseason. I think they've got him. They've got him. Good.
I don't think he pitches. I think he's done with the Blue Jays. I think he'll throw his last innings in his next game.
Yeah, or maybe he makes the playoff roster as the last guy, but I still think the Blue Jays might want to go with, because they have a ton of bullpen depth, they probably might want to go with something like that, maybe even leaving him off the playoff roster. We will see. I want Kikuchi just because I love the strikeout potential he has. He has stopped walking people, and it's just sometimes he can get on a roll where he'll give you his 5 innings. He'll strike out 8, walk 1, and maybe give up 2 hits. It's just the hits, the contact that's going to be a problem. Berrios, man, I get it. If the ground ball stuff is working and he is on, he can be really effective, but I'm still terrified of Jose Berrios, and it would not surprise me if he goes 5 innings, 4 earned runs, and next thing you know, the Blue Jays are battling from behind. And as we've learned from this season, it's tough for the Blue Jays to come battle from behind. So that's how I'd line up the starting rotation going through this last week of the season.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too upset if it was Kikuchi or Berrios. I know at that point you would just go with the analytics. Who's pitched better at Tropicana Field? Who pitched better against the certain guys that you're gonna go against? And either way, I would be okay with whatever they decide, but they would both be on very short leashes.
And that's almost definitely going to be the case. It's going to be the Blue Jays bullpen, which has been really good this year, that is going to determine how well the Blue Jays do. So let's follow that down the stretch.